Yeah, the CRISTAL trial was looking at anticoagulation in joint replacement surgery. So joint replacement surgery is one of the most expensive procedures that we do in Australia. There's over 100,000 of them done every year, hip and knee replacements. And there's always been an argument about what the best way of preventing clots, which is one of the major complications of big surgery like that, clots in the lung and clots in the leg. And the way of preventing that, many surgeons use aspirin and many other surgeons use heparin. And ever since I've been a resident, there's been arguments about which one's best, and nobody's ever done an adequate trial to compare them. So that's what we set about doing. And we applied to the MRFF for that grant and were successful. And we were able to nest that trial within the Australian Joint Replacement Registry, which is the first registry nested trial in orthopaedics. And that enabled it to be done fairly efficiently, and we were able to recruit over 20,000 patients in about 2 years. It actually wasn't too difficult because there was always this ongoing argument between surgeons, and that's surgeons here in southwest Sydney. We would always debate with each other about what was the best drug, and those sorts of debates were going on everywhere. And so the surgeons were quite happy to be part of a larger team, and we built a huge team for this study with 31 hospitals across the country to try and answer this question. And fortunately it was a question that everybody wanted answered, so that made it a little bit easier. So what we found was that aspirin, which is the most common drug used to prevent clots, and in America 97% of surgeons use aspirin alone to prevent clots, we found that it was significantly inferior to the form of heparin that we commonly use. So in fact you're twice as likely to get a clot if you use aspirin compared to clexane. So in Australia many surgeons now are changing their practice, and we're actually doing a follow-up survey to find out how many surgeons are changing practice. But it's actually created quite a backlash, and there were several lead editorials in leading orthopaedic journals fighting back against these findings. So it's a very interesting landscape at the moment. It's been fantastic. What we've done with this study is we used the money from the grant to build a clinical trials platform within the orthopaedic joint replacement registry. And because that platform has now been built, it's very easy for us to do other large registry nested trials. And so now we have another 3 or 4 ongoing trials in the registry that have been very easy to run because that software, the platform, and the surgeons now are used to running these sorts of trials. So we have several other trials that we're running through the registry, and we're able to get funding for on the back of that initial trial. And we've also had lots of other side publications. We're looking at not just the clot rate but mortality. We're also looking at patients' adherence, whether they take the drug or not. There's always been an argument that people will be happy to take aspirin because it's a pill, but they're not happy to take heparin because it's an injection. We actually found no difference in the compliance or adherence of the patients with the drugs, which was interesting as well. Yeah, every year we have at least 1 or 2 students join us in our team and do projects. And as you would expect, they vary in their success rate and how they get that published. But we were very lucky. We had one student who took on a project that required quite a bit of computing expertise. So we taught her how to use R, our statistical software, and within a few months I was learning from her how to use it, and she created this beautiful program and did a meta-regression study looking at the effectiveness of pregabalin, which is Lyrica, which is one of the most commonly prescribed drugs for neuropathic pain. And we looked at the effectiveness in all of the trials that have been done, dozens of trials over 20 years, and we found that the effectiveness has been steadily declining over time. And at no time was the effectiveness ever shown to be greater than the minimum clinically important difference. So this is a drug that is widely prescribed. The effectiveness seems to be disappearing. It's an example of what some people call the decline effect, where the initial results for new drugs are often very favourable, but when you test them again later, they don't appear to be as favourable. So it's a classic example of that. No, we actually, and this is part of the meta-regression, so we thought, oh, are they using different dosages? Is it for different indications? Are the populations changing? And none of those things were significant. These days, if you want to do clinical trials, which is my main area of focus, you really can't do them in your own hospital. You know, we do them here and it's great, and the surgeons and the staff at where I work at Liverpool and Fairfield have always been very supportive of my trials, but you need to collaborate. You need to do trials in 20 hospitals, 30 hospitals. We've got a registry nested trial now going, as an example, in 50 hospitals in Australia. And we were able to get grant funding from the Australian Orthopaedic Association for that. And again, that was because we had so much support from so many surgeons across so many hospitals. But the other thing that's helped us a bit, I think, as well, is in the last sort of 5 to 10 years, we've been instrumental in founding the ANZMUSC, which is the Australian and New Zealand Musculoskeletal Clinical Trials Network. So we built that up from nothing, and we were lucky enough to get 2 successive clinical Centre for Research Excellence grants from the NHMRC for that. And that's really established a culture of excellence in clinical trials in the musculoskeletal field. And all of the musculoskeletal trialists around Australia and New Zealand now meet regularly, whether their interest is in osteoarthritis or surgery, where mine is, or other aspects of musculoskeletal care. So there's physios, rheumatologists, orthopaedic surgeons, etc., all come together. So that's been really helpful. I guess it's where I wanted to be, but I never knew whether I'd actually be able to, sort of pull it off. And it was about 10 years ago when I got my first grant, so I've only really been seriously in the game for the last 10 or 11 years.